Tim Sweeney has discovered that Steam does not sell Fortnite, which is fascinating because Tim Sweeney controls where Fortnite gets sold. Today, we are separating his argument from the billions headline, checking Epic's business, and asking whether Valve is missing money. By the end, we will know whether Steam ignored a fortune or Epic blamed Valve for choices publishers made. This fight is not about one missing game. Instead, it concerns who controls PC gaming, who takes the money, and who becomes the next gatekeeper. Here stands Epic's billionaire founder, studying the largest PC storefront, then explaining it could attract more people by carrying Fortnite. According to the interview, Steam also lacks Riot Games, Genshin Impact, and other major titles with separate audiences. Specifically, Sweeney said Valve was missing a lot of opportunity because those players were not entering through Steam. So, is Valve ignoring a huge market, or is Epic pointing at an empty shelf while keeping Fortnite somewhere else? Somehow, Epic has solved retail. Stores earn more when popular products appear on their shelves. Brilliant work, detective. Before this revelation, Steam had apparently operated for more than 20 years without remembering to install Fortnite. First, we need to stop the headline from lying on Sweeney's behalf. WCCF Tech turned his vague claim about opportunity into a headline about billions left on the table. Yet Sweeney presented no calculations showing lost sales conversion rates, or several $1 billion waiting behind Valve's sofa. No spreadsheet appeared, no model surfaced, and no estimate separated Fortnite spending from money spent elsewhere. Apparently, opportunity sounded too weak, so the headline gave it a private jet. Therefore, remember the first hard fact: the billions belong to the headline, not to a demonstrated estimate from Sweeney. Worse, the missing game argument has another problem. Nothing shows Valve banning Fortnite, League of Legends, Valorant, Genshin Impact, or their publishers. Fortnite remains Epic's property, Riot controls its own releases, and Hoyoverse decides where Genshin appears. Ownership matters because Steam cannot list somebody else's game without permission. Imagine locking your car in your garage, then blaming your neighbor for not driving it. Admittedly, a Valve could approach those companies or offer better terms, but it cannot publish their games by force. Consequently, the interview does not prove Valve caused every absence or refused every possible deal. Blaming the empty shelf while controlling the product is corporate performance art with account integration. Conceptually, Team Open deserves a fair explanation because parts could help players and developers. Under the proposal, accounts, friends items, code, and commerce could work across games through shared standards. In practice, Epic imagines your friends list, purchases, and items following you between supported games instead of staying trapped. Shared rules could reduce duplicated work and make cross-platform features easier to build. Useful ideas exist, and dismissing them would be lazy. Still, the pitch becomes slippery when Epic calls the system open while placing Unreal Engine, Fortnite systems, Epic accounts, and Epic Commerce near the center. Openness should let companies participate without surrendering control to another gatekeeper wearing friendlier branding. Connecting everyone through Epic's tools may improve compatibility, but dependence does not disappear with a polished speech. Unanswered is who controls the standards, settles disputes, and lets companies leave without breaking everything. Another question is whether digital items would truly belong to players or merely travel between corporate systems. Independence rarely begins by joining another billionaire's plan and accepting his standards, accounts, economy, and direction. Importantly, Valve has not agreed to Team Open, no industry partnership exists, and Epic has not demonstrated the system across competing publishers. Alternatively, Steam could cooperate later, reject the proposal, or support separate standards that do not make Fortnite central to PC gaming. Until implementation exists, Team Open remains an ambitious proposal, not a functioning alliance Valve stubbornly refuses to enter. Now comes the reality check. Supposedly, Steam is missing a financial revolution, so its growth should look weak, and Epic should already demonstrate the alternative scale. Meanwhile, Valve is not standing beside an empty cash register waiting for Epic to rescue it. During Valve's 5-year review period, peak concurrent use rose from roughly 25 million to 42 million, averaging about 3.4 million additional users annually. Those numbers measure simultaneous users, not monthly activity accounts or sales, but still show enormous reach. Whatever Steam is missing, customers are not one of those things. Growth at that scale does not prove Valve makes every correct decision, and it certainly does not prove Fortnite would add nothing. Plainly, Fortnite would bring players, transactions, and attention if Epic released it through Steam. However, calling Valve confused because a crowded restaurant lacks another table reverses the power relationship. Officially, Epic's store numbers deserve credit because they are substantial. December 2025 produced a record 78 million monthly active PC users, while the yearly monthly average reached 67 million. Spending reached about $1.16 billion across the PC store during the year. Third-party PC games accounted for $400 million. Respectively, Epic has built a large storefront with hundreds of millions of registered users, free games, and major releases. Crucially, those figures do not make Epic dominant over Steam, and they do not prove Valve misplaced billions by lacking Fortnite. Monthly active users count anyone active during a month, whereas concurrent users count people online at the same moment. Comparing 78 million monthly users against 42 million simultaneous users would be statistical nonsense wearing a gamer headset. Simply put, both platforms are large. The figures measure different things, and neither proves Valve is losing billions. More importantly, Epic's annual PC store spending makes the headline look theatrical. Given Epic processed about $1.16 billion in PC spending during 2025, somebody must show the mathematics before declaring Steam loses several billions. Hypothetically, a careful model could estimate a huge amount through Fortnite, Riot Genshin, mobile expansion, and extra store activity. Critically, the article did not provide that model, and Sweeney did not supply the number. To diagnose Valve, first locate the spreadsheet showing its missing billions. Numbers prove Epic has built a serious business, but they do not explain why so many players still prefer Steam. Unfortunately for Epic's lecture, Sweeney admitted in the same interview that his own store frustrates users because it feels slow. Even he identified launcher speed as a problem and said Epic is working on a complete revamp. Recent plans describe rebuilding the launcher to improve startup, browsing, and stability. Players have spent years complaining about slow loading, awkward navigation, limited social tools, and weaker convenience. Thus, the company explaining universal gaming connections is rebuilding the door customers use to reach owned games. Technically, that does not disprove Team Open. Practically, it explains why many PC players hear another ecosystem sermon and click the familiar Steam icon. Convenience beats philosophy when somebody wants to launch a game after work. Features beat slogans when reviews, refunds, family tools, workshop support, and navigation affect every purchase. Trust grows through repeated use, not through executives declaring their structure enlightened. Epic's problem was never convincing developers that 12% sounds better. It was convincing players that using the store feels better. Eventually, Team Open can connect every universe after the store finishes loading. A slow launcher already weakens Epic's lecture. The company's wider financial situation makes the timing even more uncomfortable. Notably, the layoffs do not prove Team Open is wrong, and no evidence shows the proposal caused them. March 24 brought harsher context when Epic announced more than 1,000 layoffs. Management said Fortnite engagement had declined since 2025 and Epic was spending significantly more than it made. Granted, businesses can face cuts while identifying valid opportunities elsewhere. Timing simply makes the speech sound brutal. Hearing a company announce major cuts, then watching its founder explain where Valve overlooked money, invites an obvious response. Possibly Valve missed revenue, but Epic openly admitted it had a spending problem serious enough to remove over 1,000 jobs. Workers should not become a cheap joke, because executives made the strategy and employees paid the price. Credibility matters when the speaker diagnoses another company's financial imagination. Currently, Epic is cutting costs while explaining where Valve misplaced its profits. Nevertheless, Sweeney has one argument deserving more than a roast: platform fees. Financially, his praise for Microsoft's 12% store cut is defensible. Additionally, Epic lets developers keep the first $1 million of annual net revenue per product, then applies its 88-12 split. Lower fees can leave studios with more money for wages, updates, marketing, or another project. Developers have every reason to care, particularly smaller teams operating close to failure. Customers, however, do not choose launchers because publishers receive a kinder revenue split. Consumers choose around price, convenience, performance, libraries, friends, reviews, refunds, mods, security, and trust. Developer-friendly terms can attract more games, but they do not automatically create a better customer experience. Defensively, Valve would argue that its larger cut supports infrastructure, discovery, community features, refunds, and services developers receive in return. Whether that cut is justified remains debatable, but the defense deserves acknowledgement. Gamers do not open a launcher at midnight because they feel emotionally connected to its accounting policy. Finally, we reach the real competition question. Sweeney's best argument is that Steam's dominance gives Valve little pressure to lower its fee or support systems beyond Steam. Such concern is legitimate, and stronger rivals can pressure Valve to improve terms, services discovery, and support. Cross-platform standards could reduce fragmentation, while broader compatibility could help players maintain friendships across games. Bringing Fortnite, Riot titles, and Genshin Impact to Steam would also give Valve access to audiences it does not fully reach. Equally, Epic controls Fortnite's distribution and must decide whether Steam's audience is worth Valve's conditions. Riot and Hoyoverse face their own calculations, none of which become Valve's unilateral decision. Fairness requires admitting that Sweeney sees a genuine market gap. Honesty requires admitting that he presents Epic's preferred solution as though Valve is confused. That is the dividing line. Epic has built a convincing case for developers, but not an equally convincing case for players who judge stores through use, not speeches. Tell me whether Epic has a real answer to Steam, or just another platform speech. Verdict: yes. Steam is missing enormous gaming audiences, but no, the evidence does not show Valve forgot how money works or that several $1 billion are guaranteed. Ironically, Sweeney began by identifying a Fortnite-shaped hole in Steam, while standing beside the company keeping Fortnite outside Steam. Ultimately, Epic does not need another speech proving Valve could make more money. It needs a storefront convincing enough that players voluntarily move their purchases, habits, communities, and trust. Valve may be missing Fortnite, but Epic is still missing the reason millions of gamers refuse to leave Steam.